Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back to the Been There, Done That podcast. I am your host, and I go by Ben. Episode 57 today of the Been There, Done That podcast, which makes this your Francisco Rodriguez episode. Shout out to K-Rod, I believe the all-time leader in single saves, or saves in a single season, with 62. I think that was in 2008. Which is crazy because I think that's more wins than the White Sox had all year long. So shout out to K-Rod, episode 57. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a quick little recap of the last 3 games for the Chiefs. It's been a while since we've talked. I've been gone basically a month, and the Chiefs have played 3 games since then. 2 of those games have mattered. One of them didn't really matter, but somehow the game that didn't matter made everybody angry, and we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about those 3 games the Chiefs played. We'll talk about some of the narratives that are now swirling around the Chiefs. There are some new ones, some new fun, kind of silly narratives that are now swirling around the Chiefs, and we'll talk about those. And then, of course, we'll talk about the divisional round of the NFL weekend, the divisional weekend round of the NFL. There you go. And we'll talk about those games, those matchups, and the predictions, what I see happening. Spoiler alert, I think the Chiefs are probably going to win, but stick around and I'll tell you why. So without further ado, let's jump right in. First game of the 3 games, the first game of the last 3 games that the Chiefs played against the Texans back in December. Feels like a long time ago now, but I think this is the one where the offense really finally started to click. I think this was the second game that we had Joe Thuney playing left tackle. I think the first game was against the Browns. It's like, here's Myles Garrett, have fun with that. But he held his own. Kind of, I would describe it. He's kind of like dying a slow death. It's like he never got beat. Like we saw Kingsley Suamataia and Wanye Morris on multiple occasions while they were playing. Guys just ran right by them, But that didn't happen at all with Joe Thuney. Like he was getting pushed back. He seemed to be a little outsized, a little outmatched, but he never just got immediately beat. And that's ultimately that's what Mahomes needs more than anything is just a little bit of time. Just hold up for a couple seconds and just don't let anyone immediately get to him. And that's what Joe Thuney did, and he's gotten better every single game. And so I think this game against the Texans was the first time we really saw that. And it was where he kind of started to figure out a little bit more of his technique and what he needed to do to play that position successfully, right? And this is one of those games that the Chiefs they won by 8 points, but the outcome of the game never really felt like it was in question, right? There was that play in the third quarter where Tank Dell had that pretty gross injury, and he caught the touchdown pass, and that brought the Texans missed the extra point, so they were down 1. They never actually got it tied, but because of that, after that, the Chiefs, I want to say that both teams scored another touchdown, another field goal. Maybe after that, I'd have to double check exactly, but even after that moment, after Tank Dell went out, it felt like the life was just kind of sucked out of the Texans in a way, and CJ Stroud was more upset than I feel like I've ever seen a player on a field, other than maybe with the DeMar Hamlin stuff that happened a few years back. And he was like clearly just distraught. And it almost kind of took the wind out of the sails of any chance they had to come back in the game. So it was a weird situation. But I also feel like the Chiefs were never really in danger of losing that game. So, I feel like it's kind of a big spread for the 8 points. It's a lot, 8 points. I don't know the right way to say that, but it is what it is. And you can add this to the list of games the Chiefs have played this year that they could have got to 31, because apparently 31 is like the new magic number that tells you whether or not a team is good. 31 is the defining number, right? And it's another one of those games the Chiefs could have got to 31 if Kareem Hunt didn't, go down on purpose in the red zone on that last drive, right? The Chiefs, inside the 2-minute warning, Texans are out of timeouts. The game, if he goes down in the red zone, the game is over. And that's what he did, right? He probably could have gotten the end zone, or he could have at least gotten very close. And if the Chiefs cared at all about that random 31 number, they would have scored and they would have gone in, and then the narrative would have had to be something new. But the Chiefs don't care about that at all. They wanted to win the game because the game was over. And so they went down and they kneeled a few times and the game was over. So they didn't get to 31. So you can add that to the long list of games the Chiefs probably could have hit 31, but chose not to because the game was over. So why run up the score, right? So that was the first game that since I had not been back in a while. The next one was the Chiefs versus Steelers. I really appreciated the Chiefs didn't ruin my Christmas like they did last year. That was nice of them. I think it was pretty clearly their best game of the season. Just offensively and defensively, at least the offense seemed to very much just everything was clicking for the most part. Joe Tooney's really, again, not like a prototypical left tackle. He doesn't have the size for it, but he's doing what he's supposed to do, holding up. TJ Watt didn't really have much of an impact on the game. And the Chiefs seemed to be figuring things out, both on offense and defense. Had a couple turnovers and scored 27 points. And you can add this also to the games where the Chiefs probably should have scored 31, that magic 31, but they didn't do it because of an missed extra point. One that got, it was 15 yards longer than a normal extra point in the first drive because Xavier Worthy flashed the side of, showed everyone the gun he was carrying apparently. And so that backed up the Chiefs 15 yards. Butker missed the extra point. And so a few scores later, they went for 2 to try to make that point up and they didn't get it. So with that, they left 3 points on the board. And if you remember, they scored 29 points. So again, it had nothing to do with the offense not being good enough. It was just a silly thing to do by a rookie, and then a missed extra point, didn't convert on 2-point conversion, and they don't hit 31. So, the fact that they won by 19 points wasn't enough. You have to get to 31, remember? But on top of that, I would also say this, actually. I think you look at this 31-point thing, I feel like part of it is the Chiefs are intentionally not getting it at this point. I'm pretty sure they've seen the stat about not getting to 31 points. And part of me thinks the Chiefs are intentionally not getting to it. And they're just winning by not getting to 31 just to make everybody angry, just to make the internet keep losing their minds. And it's really funny because people's brains are just breaking when it comes to the Chiefs, and it's hilarious. But the funny thing to me about this one is after the game, there was actually the most of the talk I saw on the internet after the game still somehow managed to be that the refs gave the game to the Chiefs in a 19-point win. And I think that pretty much sums up the world we're living in right now. Right. So I'm not sure what they're supposed to do, but they won by 19 and it looked great. And that was the last time they played a game that mattered. And that was darn near a month ago. I think it will have been 24-ish days since they played that when they played this Saturday. So feels like it's been a while, but I'm excited for them to get back to it. And then, of course, the Chiefs versus the Broncos. Don't want to spend too much time on it, but I am reminded of how thankful I am that the Chiefs do have the starters that they do. I think they'd probably be in a pretty rough spot if a lot of these backups were playing for them, but I guess that's why they're backups. I guess that's how it works. But with that, right, I think this was one of the more vanilla game plans you're ever going to see in an NFL game, both on offense and defense. Right, the offense it was like handoff, throw it 4 yards, punt it away, and defense is very simple. They just weren't showing anything, and I think that is contributing to, or a big contributing factor to why it's 38-0. So they just didn't want to put anything else on film, right? Why would you? You already have the 1 seed locked up. Why would you? And most importantly, they don't want anyone to get injured, right? A lot of their key guys were out, but you don't have enough players on a roster to do all backups. And so they still had a handful of starters playing in the game. And so you can't just, sit everybody out. And so you still have starters in the game. And just the idea of a vanilla game plan, we're just going to keep it simple. With that, hopefully less guys are going to be getting injured, doing things that they're less comfortable with, whatever it is. I don't know. But it was very clear they were going to stick to their vanilla game plan, get in and try to keep everybody healthy and get out. Right. And so all that happened. The Chiefs obviously lost 38-0. And the main talking point around the NFL for the whole last week was that the Chiefs lost that game on purpose for one reason, and one reason only, and it was to make sure that the big, bad, scary Cincinnati Bengals didn't get into the postseason. And so I think this is a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is some of these narratives, some of the conversations that are going on surrounding the Chiefs right now. And this first one, of course, is the fact that the Chiefs lost to the Broncos on purpose just so that the Bengals wouldn't make it into the postseason. So, that's not true, to keep it simple. I mean, lots of reasons for you here. Number one, the Bengals haven't beaten the Chiefs since December of 2022. And they haven't made the playoffs in 2 years, back-to-back years. And I know everyone talks about Joe Burrow being this kryptonite for Mahomes, but he is 3-2 total in his career versus Patrick Mahomes. He's 1-1 in the playoffs, and he's 1-2 at Burrowhead, as they call it. He has a losing record at Burrowhead. That's a little odd. That's, a little weird that he would have a losing record at this stadium named after him. It's crazy to me how that happens. But looking at the notes here, they, I've mentioned this before. They've had more run, I think, from one playoff game 3 years ago, right? That game in the AFC Championship game, the Bengals won, where Mahomes really did just play the worst game of his career, or the worst half, I should say, of his career, and the Bengals won. And because of that, literally that one game 3 years ago, all of a sudden the Bengals are eternally just Chiefs kryptonite, even though the Chiefs have won 3 games in a row since then. And since that game, the Chiefs have not lost a playoff game. The Chiefs have won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and that was 3 years ago. So, I know we love this narrative about the Bengals being the kryptonite, blah, 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 but at some point, we're going to have to move on and say, okay, that game that happened 3 years ago maybe that's not still affecting what's happening today in 2025, maybe. Continuing on here, the Bengals were 2-7 against playoff teams this year. Some of them were close, true, but for the amount that Chiefs get killed for winning close games, I mean, we should be destroying. I mean, they should just be wrecked, right? For losing close games. I mean, at some point you got to win, right? But they were 2-7 against playoff teams, and those two wins against playoff teams came in the last 2 weeks. One was against the rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, and the Broncos, in a game that Bengals really should have lost. They got lucky to win. I mean, their kicker missed the field goal in overtime, and the Broncos got the ball back and just looked like they'd never played football before. And then the following week against the Steelers, who have looked like one of the worst teams in football over the last month or so. They, got it written down here somewhere. Where is it? I think the Steelers' last time they won a game was December 8th against the Browns. Right, so the Bengals kind of snuck into that position, and they needed 2 other teams to also lose to even be in that position. Right, and so they kind of barely snuck into that position of even being close. But then nobody's talking about how the Bengals lost to the Patriots back in week 1, a team that has a top 5 pick. Right, that doesn't matter. It's not about the Bengals losing games. It's about the Chiefs losing to a team that doesn't let them get in, right? It's just silly, okay? And another part of this is like the lots of people in the NFL, I think, at this point in time, were calling the Bengals the hottest team in football because of their 5-game winning streak, right? It was they've won 5 games in a row. Look out. Chiefs don't want to play them. They're red hot. They're scary, which is also kind of funny. Because why don't we look at the games that the Bengals have played? Those 5 wins they had. The first one was against, where's it at? First one was against the Cowboys, a team that missed the playoffs, had a backup quarterback in. The next game was against the Titans, the team that has the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. The next win was against the Browns, the team that has the number 2 pick in next year's draft. And then the games we just talked about against Denver, against Pittsburgh, 2 teams that really didn't look great. Denver looked really good against all the Chiefs backups, I'll give them that. But they won that one at home against the rookie quarterback, and then they snuck by the Steelers after one of the worst 2-minute drives you'll ever see from a quarterback in Russell Wilson in that game. And the big bad Cincinnati offense that's just unstoppable scored 19 points in that one, and in the game that they had to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. So, you won 5 games against mediocre competition and got into that position, but you were only there because you couldn't beat the Patriots, right? It's funny. They were the hottest team in the league for winning 5 games against that competition. Meanwhile, the Chiefs had just won 6 in a row before resting the starters in Week 18. But that would not be as fun to talk about, would it? Right? And all that to say, they were kind of lucky to be there in the first place, and they most likely would have gotten steamrolled by Buffalo in the first round anyway. Because number one, that's what Buffalo does. That's what Buffalo's known for. If Buffalo does anything well, it is roll teams in the wild card round. They've done it like 5 years in a row. They posted a playoff game in the wild card round and just smoked the opponent that they play. Whether it's, Bo Nix this year, whether it's Mac Jones a couple years ago, whether it's Mason Rudolph last year, all these guys that they just like to smoke in the wild card round. The Bengals, that would have been their matchup. They would have gone to Buffalo and gotten rolled, right? So the only way that the Chiefs could have even played the Bengals was if the Bengals go into Buffalo and beat the Bills. And as a Chiefs fan, I'm like, I would love for that to happen. I would have loved for the Bengals to do that, right? So like this idea the Chiefs really didn't want the Bengals to get in, it's wrong. Like they would have loved for the Bengals to be in and play Buffalo, because it's a win-win for the Chiefs. Either the Bengals get in and then they get smoked, or they come in and they beat the in my opinion, the only real threat, the biggest threat, I would say, when you're talking head-to-head matchups that the Chiefs have in the Bills. Because I think the Bills, I think Josh Allen's the one guy in the NFL who can, on his best day, he can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, and he showed that in the 13-second game. Right? It's not good enough, but he can get pretty darn close, and I think we've seen that. So, yeah, I would have loved for Cincinnati to get in and play Buffalo, and it would have been great as a Chiefs fan to see that. But the other part of this that I'm still confused about is why was nobody up in arms about the Bills resting their starters in Week 18, right? If anything, the Bills did something even dirtier than the Chiefs, if we want to talk about it like that, because they lost to the Patriots and with the Bills and all of their backups. They lost the Patriots, who at that point in time when the game started had the number 1 overall pick in the draft. But the Bills went in and tried to lose the game. If that's what we're doing these days, they tried to lose the game and they lost. And the Patriots now, they dropped like 3 or 4 spots in the draft and they don't have the number 1 pick anymore, right? So that what they did was just as, if you want to call it strategic, as what the Chiefs did, even though I don't believe what the Chiefs did was strategic at all. It was just resting people. But you're not going to hear that from the media, right? Okay, then what about the Rams? Rams did the same thing. Okay, they rested all of their starters in a game that still had implications on the seeding. They could have locked up the 3 with a win, which would have meant they'd play a 12-win Commanders team. But instead, they didn't play their starters. They put Jimmy Garoppolo in, and they lost, and it dropped them down to the 4, which meant instead of the 12-win Commanders, they're going to host the 14-win Vikings. And hindsight's 2020 now that the Commanders have won their game and the Rams have won their game. Clearly, they knew what they were doing. But again, point is, no one said a word about the Rams resting their starters in a game that mattered, in a game that still had implications on the seeds. They were still so focused on the Chiefs resting their starters, even though the Chiefs do this basically just about every single year anyway. But because this year it just happened to keep the Bengals out, everyone was very angry. So sorry, Bengals. I'm sorry that you aren't good enough to beat the Patriots. Maybe next year, when you don't have T. Higgins and you're paying all the money to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and you have a new defensive coordinator, maybe then you'll figure it out. Maybe then you can beat the Patriots and sneak into the playoffs. So good luck, Cincinnati fans. Hope it works out for you. So yeah, we can add this to the long list of examples of the goalpost being moved for the Chiefs, right? It's just because of how much everybody hates them, and we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, and I'm sure we're going to keep talking about it in the future, but I just got to point it out. Someone's got to, right? Because you look at it like this: the Chiefs win a close game on kind of weird circumstances, whether it's a blocked kick or it hits the upright and goes in. Which, again, side note, Commanders just won a game by doinking in a field goal, and no one seems to be mad about it. It's weird. The Commanders won a game on a Hail Mary and a doinked field goal. No one's mad about it. But the Chiefs won a few games in some weird ways, but everybody's mad about it, right? What was I even talking about? Chiefs win close games. It's the refs and it's the black magic. It's Taylor Swift casting a spell, right? I've seen that on the internet, like in multiple places. If the Chiefs win big, it's still the refs. They were only up big because the refs put them there. And then when the Chiefs lose, oh, they lost on purpose. They should have won. Well, which is it? If they're not actually good enough to win games, then why didn't they win the game? You know, like, then why would they lose? And it doesn't make any sense. So it literally does not matter what the Chiefs do. They can win. People are mad. They can lose. The people are mad. But that's the world we live in. You just can't win. So the next part of all this, I don't know if this is as much a narrative thing as it kind of is, but I want to look at, excuse me, talk about where the Chiefs sit in all of the award voting, right? With all the AP voting that's going on. Because think about it. You got this team that was 15-1 before resting starters in the last week. So 15-2, sure, you call it what you want. Locked up the 1 seed at Christmas, and they've been in control of the 1 seed all year. 2-time defending Super Bowl champion, right? Surely they have a lot of guys up for awards and being recognized, right? Let's talk about that. First off, where else do you start besides the quarterback? I mean, surely Mahomes, he's got to be in the MVP discussion, right? No. He just finished 7th in passing yards, and he was the best fourth quarter QB in every statistical category all year. And oh, by the way, he only lost 1 game. But no, the internet would have you believe he's having the worst year any quarterback has ever had, and he shouldn't even be a starter in the NFL. That's what the internet would tell you. So, no, Mahomes is not in the MVP conversation. He's not in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation. So, it's not that. It's not Mahomes. It's not Travis Kelce, who, again, if you ask the internet, would tell you he is washed. He's not good anymore. He never was good, and he can't block, even though he was the 5th-ranked fantasy football tight end in football this year. But no, it's not Travis Kelce. He's old. It's not that. It's not the rookie receiver. The Chiefs don't have a single pass catcher or anybody on the team over 1,000 yards from scrimmage this year. So it can't be the offense. The offense is not the reason they're winning, right? Okay, it's got to be the defense, right? They've got Defensive Player of the Year candidates, correct? No. Even though the eye test would suggest that Chris Jones and Trent McDuffie are 2 of the top 10, maybe call it top 15 defensive players in the NFL, they are nowhere to be found on Defensive Player of the Year candidate list, right? They're not you can't even look at them for betting and for odds, anything like that. So it's not Chris Jones and it's not Trent McDuffie. It's nobody on the defense. So it's no offensive player. It's no defensive player. It's not any of the 3 kickers that the Chiefs have used this year. None of them. Right? And Butker's still kind of hurt. If I'm being honest, that may be the biggest concern I have for the Chiefs moving forward. It's not his ability to make kicks, but it's just the fact that he's kind of hurt. He didn't seem totally 100% in the last few weeks. So hopefully this nice long break is going to help Butker get healed back up and ready for the playoffs. Because as we know, the Chiefs probably don't have 3 Super Bowls without him. He's been a huge part of the success. So hopefully he's back to himself. But it was a little bit worrisome to see some of that with Butker the last few weeks. But I think it'll be all right. But right, so it's not the offensive players. It's not the defensive players. It's not the special teams. It's not that. It must be the coaches, right? Surely the coaches, given all their lack of talent on this team, surely the coaches are up for awards, right? Wrong. Steve Spagnuolo is not even in any discussion for assistant coaches of the year. Okay, the Chiefs' defense was 2nd in points per game allowed until the last game of the season when they sat their starters. Before that, they were in 2nd place in points per game. But you're not going to hear anything about Steve Spagnuolo. You're going to hear about Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, both of the Detroit coordinators. You're going to hear about Todd Monken in Baltimore. You're going to hear about Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator in Minnesota. And all those guys had great years. It's true. But you're not going to hear anything about Spagnuolo, who once again continues to prove why he really is the best defensive coordinator in football. And just continues to show it year after year. And comes up with the biggest plays in the biggest moments. And in the biggest spots every single time he has the right play call, seemingly. But you're not going to hear it. So it's not the defensive coordinator. It must be the head coach, right? It's got to all point back to the head coach. It's got to be Andy Reid. Surely he's in the discussion for Coach of the Year, right? Wrong. Now, I checked the odds on this, and he currently has the 6th best odds to win NFL Coach of the Year. He is a plus 7,500, which basically means he's not going to win that. There are 5 guys that the NFL odds makers would tell you have had a better coaching year than Andy Reid, who's the 1 seed. And they're not going to tell you, even though they went 15-1 before the last game of the year. They're 15-1 while missing significant time from running back 1, receiver 1, receiver 3, receiver 4, receiver 5, cornerback 2, defensive end number 1, kicker 1, kicker 2. Not to mention, they've had the worst left tackle play, arguably, in the NFL. They've had turnstiles playing left tackle basically until week 15. But you're not going to hear that anywhere. Somehow, like when we look at all this, like you see the problem? It's not the offensive players. It's not the defensive players. It's not the special teams, and it's not the coaches. None of those reasons could possibly mean the Chiefs are 15-1 or call it 15-2, still the number 1 seed, right? None of those. It was none of the players and none of the coaches. It just happened, right? Maybe it was the refs. That's if I were to ask a random poll, that's probably what I would hear, is that it was the refs that got them there. Maybe that's it. But I feel like I just had to point that out because the Chiefs are nowhere to be found in any of the award voting anywhere. And the scary thing about this is it seems to me like the AP voters, the people that vote on these awards, maybe they're being more influenced by NFL Twitter and NFL Instagram commenters than they ever have in the past. It seems like they're buying into more what random people on the internet are thinking. Because if they weren't, you'd have at least one of these groups of Chiefs, either players or coaches, would be in here somewhere. Me personally, I think it should be Andy Reid. I think it's insane. He's coached for however long he has, and I don't think he's ever won Coach of the Year. Maybe once early on with the Eagles. But the fact that he's taken this team that's dealt with as many injuries as nearly any team in the league besides maybe Detroit and San Francisco, at least in terms of key players, right? He's taken this team and led them back to the number 1 seed after winning back-to-back Super Bowls, right? There's something off. Like it's very clear that the voters don't. Something's off, and I don't know what it is. But if it were up to me, it would be Andy Reid because I agree. Mahomes hasn't had his best year. Statistically, the defensive individual players haven't had the best years. Chris Jones hasn't racked up as many sacks as he might normally. Trent McDuffie has 2 interceptions, but even though he locks down everyone he covers. And Mahomes has been sacked more than he ever has in the past. But they keep winning games. And so when you ask me, that's the coach. That's the coach's doing. And so I think the fact that Andy Reid isn't even like really in discussions for Coach of the Year is just wrong, in my opinion. And so I think that's probably the biggest miss of this whole thing is why isn't Andy Reid there? But at the end of the day, I'm sure they probably don't care at all. They're probably saying, you know what? Don't give us the awards. We will just go win the Super Bowl. And Patrick Mahomes is going to win Super Bowl MVP again. And we'll just keep winning those awards while everyone else throws a fit. Right? And I know I've probably feels like I've been harping quite a bit here on how unfair it is for the Chiefs, and not even unfair, but it's just frustrating the narrative and narratives and all of the negative energy towards the Chiefs. And the last thing I'll say on it is it makes me think of the Patriots during their run, during the dynasty. Everybody really hated him, myself included. I hated him. You know, they did have a few scandals here and there, but at the end of the day, I just didn't like him because they kept winning. And I was like, please, somebody has got to beat them, you know, like, because they were the standard of the league. They were the gold standard, which the Chiefs are now. And during the Patriots run, everybody hated him. But here we are 5 years removed from the dominant run of the Patriots, 5-6 years roughly, half decade. And now people look back and they talk about Tom Brady glowingly, right? And he's pretty unanimously regarded as the GOAT, right? As he should be at this point in time. And I think it's one of those things we are in the heat of the moment right now with the Chiefs that everyone is going to hate them and root for them to lose. But I'm hopeful that whether it's 15, 20 years down the road, whenever it is that we are a handful of years removed from this run by the Chiefs that people, once the Chiefs aren't still the dominant force in the league, whenever that day comes, that people will look back and be like, you know what? They really were that team. Kind of the same way we do with the Patriots, of like, we didn't like it in the moment, but in hindsight, looking back now, it's like, yeah, they had it figured out, and they were the best team. And so I am hopeful that's what the case is. Now, granted, we're not going to have that for another probably 15 years at least. I think Mahomes has another 10 years left in him at least. I think he's got another 8 to 10 as being the best player in the league. We'll call it 8. He's 29. Usually 39-year-olds aren't going to be that guy, but you never know. Mahomes, he's done things we haven't seen before. But he's got another half decade to decade of being that guy. And then, who knows? Maybe he goes another 5 years, kind of like Brady did. Maybe he goes somewhere else. I don't know. But again, it's probably going to be another 15, maybe even 20 years down the road before we get to the point of people look back and actually appreciate what the Chiefs did. Kind of similar what's happening with LeBron, if we're being honest as well. Of his whole career, all anyone has ever done is hate on him. Right? Not myself. There's a handful of people that are big LeBron supporters who all we've ever tried to do is highlight and talk about how great he is, But there's also a lot of people that would love for him to just retire and move on because they're tired of seeing him succeed. But 5-10 years down the road, we're going to look back and be like, man, I cannot believe the things LeBron James did for 20 plus years, and who knows how long he's going to keep going, right? So fingers crossed that's what's going to happen with the Chiefs eventually down the road when the dynasty isn't still going anymore, 15 years from now. So that's probably enough on Chiefs narratives and stuff like that. I do now want to talk about some divisional round matchups. What's coming up? We will start with the Chiefs. Just we're going to go in order of the games and how they're going to happen. So we have Chiefs versus Texans this Saturday, 3:30 on ESPN and ABC. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman on the call. Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites, which I feel like they've been that line's been similar in that ballpark for them a lot recently, and I do like them to cover. And I have them winning 26-17, which is a bit of a funky number. But this is one of those, I think the Chiefs, it's one of those, it's going to feel like they're in control most of the game. There's going to be a few plays here and there that are like frustrating and annoying. And it's like, why would you go for that? It's 4th and 1 on the 40. You just go for it. And I think Andy Reid's going to play it relatively conservatively. And the Chiefs are going to work their way into the red zone and just kick a bunch of field goals. That's where I got the 26 from. I think that I see it like 2 touchdowns and then 4 field goals, getting up to the 26 mark. But also the deeper part of it is, like I mentioned before, with Harrison Butker and him getting back into the swing of things. I think Andy Reid recognizes that too. And in a way, when faced with the option of, should I go score this touchdown or just take the field goal, he's going to take field goals more often than not. With the hope of getting Butker back right and getting his confidence back up a little bit, heading into the games that really matter in the Arrowhead Invitational and of course the Super Bowl after that. Because if Butker's in the right place, then the team's going to be hard to stop. And so it's a weird prediction. It goes against what I've been asking Andy Reid to do forever. I love when they're aggressive. I love when they go for it on 4th and 1, even in the red zone or on the plus side of the field. But I would not be surprised to see Andy Reid use this as the game to get Butker back right. And so I think they're going to win 26-17, 4 field goals. And I'll give a little bit of credit to Houston's defense too. They do have a very good defense, and I think they hold up the Chiefs more than they would like to be held up in the red zone, and that's another issue they've faced a lot of this year. And so red zone issues plus wanting to get Harrison Butker right leads to a, what is that math there? 9-point Chiefs victory. Chiefs cover and move on to the Arrowhead Invitational. 7th year in a row of being in the, is that right? Something like, I'm losing track. I believe 7 years in a row of playing in the AFC Championship game. That'll be the 6th one at home in the Mahomes era. Next game, we got Lions versus the Commanders. I was a little surprised with the line on this game. The Lions are 9.5-point favorites. Saturday at 7 o'clock on Fox. 9.5 is quite a bit for a playoff game. maybe I should say for a non-wild card playoff game. Um, and I don't see the Lions winning by that much. I think the Lions are going to win. I think they're going to win 31-27. It's going to be a fun, somewhat of a shootout type of game. But I also think the Lions rushing game is going to be a little too much for the Commanders to handle. And David Montgomery's supposed to be back. And so Jahmyr Gibbs had been pretty electric, even with Montgomery out. But they're going to have both the guys back. They got the Sonic and Knuckles. And it's just going to be a little too much for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels is going to keep him in the game. He's going to put up a fight. But it's just a little bit too much for Detroit, who feels a little bit like a team of destiny this year. And so I got Lions winning by 4. Commanders cover. Next up, we have on Sunday, we've got the Eagles versus the Rams at 2 o'clock on NBC. This is the one. I'm probably going to go with the upset here. The Eagles are 6.5 point favorites in this one, which is, again, a little interesting to me. Almost basically a touchdown against a red hot team. I don't know if you call them red hot, but last week looked very good against a Minnesota team who won 14 games. And the one thing that keeps me slightly nervous would be the Rams going all the way east, playing in Philadelphia. It's going to be cold. Conditions are probably not going to be great. But I do think the Rams are going to win this game 23-17. Matt Stafford's kind of on a heater. He steps up his game in the postseason. We've seen that. But on the flip, I think it's really more about the Eagles. I think there's something about the vibes of the Eagles that just don't feel right now. Right? With A.J. Brown, all of his, get me the ball more stuff that's going on. And he only had 1 target last week, I think. Maybe 1 catch, something like that. And to the point he was just reading his book on the sideline, which was kind of hilarious. And the fact that the Philly fans have sold this book out and made it the number 1 selling book in America, it's kind of hilarious. But the fact that in the middle of a game, in the third quarter, in a game that wasn't won, they were up by a score, maybe a touchdown. A.J. Brown's over on the sideline just reading a book, just casually, and something about that feels way off. I don't know what it is that you're in a playoff game in the third quarter in a 1-score game, and you're really not even focused on it. Plus the whole thing with Lane Johnson a few weeks ago saying that he didn't want to play in the last week of the season, and get Saquon the record. He's like, we already got the 2,000. I think we're good. And I think it feels to me like there's some things on the inside of the locker room that are just going on in Philadelphia, and the vibes just aren't quite right. Not as bad as they were last year, where they were in free fall, but it's tough because the Eagles have a very good defense. Saquon is having a historic year. I just don't think Jalen Hurts is really that guy. I think it was an anomaly. His 2022 season was a bit of an anomaly. Made it to the Super Bowl on the back of a historic defense. But yeah, I like the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win. That's kind of probably my one upset pick, which would lead into this last one. We got Ravens-Bills, which on paper looks like it should be the most fun, intriguing matchup of the whole weekend. And I hope it is. Right? I hope the Chiefs are a blowout. I want them all to be good games, of course, except for the Chiefs, so I hope they win by a lot. You never know. But the Bills and the Ravens are 1-point favorite at 5:30 on Sunday on CBS. And what my gut is telling me about this one, I think there's one of 2 outcomes. I think the Ravens are going to win easily, or the Bills are going to win in dramatic fashion. I think those are the 2 options of how we're going to see this go. I don't see Buffalo winning I don't see Buffalo winning this one in a blowout, and I don't see Baltimore winning this in a close one. I think those go against what those 2 teams, the way they're constructed and the way that their games have played out against each other, especially. So if it comes down to a last minute heroics, I think Josh Allen's would be that guy, but I don't think Lamar would be that guy. But on the flip side, I could also see the Ravens just dominating the ball, the possession, and 1 or 2 missed drives without scoring for Buffalo is going to put them in too deep of a hole to get out of. And that's when you see Josh Allen start pressing, fall back to what he has been in the past. So I think those are the 2 ways that I see it going. But I think the Ravens are going to win this one 34-24. I think I'm a little hesitant to have such a high score in this one, but there's just something about the way both of these two defenses. The Ravens defense has played better as of late, but the Bills have played worse defensively as of late. And I still think Josh Allen's good enough. He's going to put some points up, and it is in Buffalo. So I think Derrick Henry is going to run all over the Bills, and I think this is going to open up some things for Lamar, whether it's a big run or even just a big pass to whoever, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, whoever it is, maybe likely has a big game. I don't know. That's the thing. The Ravens have a lot of potential candidates of guys that can kind of go crazy, have a big game. So I think that's how it's most likely going to go. I like the Ravens to win by about 10 points. And that makes me happy as a Chiefs fan. Like, as a Chiefs fan, I want Baltimore to win this game for a few reasons. I think the Chiefs have been pretty good against the run. I think they usually have good game plans to slow down the run, and they've slowed down Derrick Henry in the playoffs in the past. And obviously they've had success against Lamar Jackson just in general, playoffs or regular season. And if they do that, if the Chiefs slow down the run, I think their offense is still good enough. They're gonna score some points. They're gonna get out to a lead, and then Baltimore's gonna start pressing and do exactly what they did in the AFC Championship game last year. And I think it's just going to play out very similarly. And I know Baltimore's going to go into the game thinking, we're not going to do that again. It's going to be hand the ball off. We're going to trust our run game, trust Derrick Henry, run the ball. And they're going to want to do that. But the Chiefs, for whatever reason, seem to usually have a good game plan against good rushing teams, right? And so I think they slow that down, and they get out by a score or two, and then Baltimore immediately falls back into what they've done in the past and feel like Lamar needs to turn into Tom Brady, which has never been successful for them in the games that matter, right? So that is my hope and dream of the way this all plays out. But like I said, I've got Chiefs versus Ravens in the AFC Championship game, and then I'll have the Lions hosting the Rams, which will be another fun one too. So that's kind of what I'm hoping and what I'm predicting that how the AFC divisional round is going to go. And yeah, like I said, hoping the Chiefs play Baltimore because, again, just kind of out of respect, I think Josh Allen on the flip side of this is probably the scariest guy outside of Kansas City. Definitely the biggest threat, right? It's weird because I think Baltimore matches up better with Buffalo when they play head-to-head, but I think Buffalo matches up better with Kansas City than Baltimore does, right? And it's just a styles makes fight kind of thing. And while I think Buffalo is probably a better all-around team and they have a better chance to beat the Chiefs, I still think Baltimore matches up better, and so I think that's why Baltimore is going to win. And again, we've seen in the past, I mentioned it before, the 13-second game was the closest anyone had really come to out-dueling Mahomes in a game that didn't go terrible. Like Tom Brady beat him a few times. It was kind of different circumstances. The one time Joe Burrow beat him in the playoffs, it was more Mahomes just didn't have a good half. Like he fell apart in the second half. Part of that was the defensive coordinator, but it wasn't like Joe Burrow put on some Superman performance and beat him. They won by 3 points in overtime and scored, I think, 27 points, right? So it wasn't some crazy Superman thing from Josh Allen or from Joe Burrow, whereas in the 13-second game, it really was Superman versus Superman, and it was like who is going to have the ball literally last, down to the last second, And so we've seen Josh Allen go toe-to-toe, putting the cape on and be Superman in some of these situations, and that's what worries me more than anybody else in the playoffs, And so, again, all that being said, I think whoever comes out of the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl, which is going to be the Chiefs. But either way, I think whether it's Chiefs, Buffalo, or Baltimore, any of those teams that are representing the AFC in the championship, I don't care who they're playing. I think they're going to win. As of right now, assuming there's no injuries that throw a wrench into things. But as of right now, I think that's kind of the way it's going to go. So, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it for today with divisional round predictions. Excited for this weekend. I've mentioned this in the past. I love the divisional round weekend. I think this is probably the best weekend of the playoffs in terms of number of games combined with the quality. Right, the wild card weekend you have seven games, but a lot of them are blowouts. because of the NFL's silly rule about allowing a seventh team to get in. So it's a bunch of teams that shouldn't even be in, not a bunch, but a couple teams that probably shouldn't even be in the playoffs. And so you're going to have blowouts regardless. But you move to the divisional round. You have 8 teams that have either earned their first round bye or they've already won a game to move forward in the playoffs. So you've got teams that are playing well that deserve to be there. And so hopefully you have 4 good games. Call it 1 blowout and 3 good games. That's what we're hoping for. Fingers crossed. So looking forward to this divisional round. I'm excited. And when you think about between NFL and college football, I think you have, trying to do the math in my head, you got 1 college football game left, the national championship on Monday. I'm not going to talk too much about it because there's 2 teams that I just don't like all that much. I kind of hope Notre Dame wins. I like Riley Leonard. He seems like a good guy. It's kind of somewhat of a David Goliath where Ohio State has a ton of talent and Notre Dame, they have a bunch of talent too. But again, more of a Riley Leonard. He's not an NFL quarterback. He's basically just a running back. But I like him and I kind of hope they win if I had to choose. So go Irish, I guess. Still feels weird to say. But you got that college football game, and then you have 7 NFL games left, if my math is correct. So I believe you have 8 total games remaining, 8 total football games left. Maybe 7. Something like that. Not a lot. You got a single-digit amount of games left, which is kind of sad. Wait, so let's just do the math. We got a minute. We got 4 games this weekend, plus 5 on the Monday, then 2 in the championship and the Super Bowl. So it's 8. Yeah. Trust myself. It's 8 games. You got 8 important football games left. So you got to make them count. Hopefully they're all good. Besides the one the Chiefs. Hopefully the Chiefs blow everybody out. Hopefully those 3 are blowouts. But all the others, I hope they're all good games. But it's coming to an end. We're coming to the end of the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel in this season, which is kind of a bummer because football's great. But we're not there yet. We got another month or so. Still a lot to be decided between now and then, and looking forward to it. So with that, we're going to move into our office quote of the week, coming from Michael Scott, first one of the month. Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. And I think that one really stuck out to me this week when I'm talking about all of the people on social media, the narratives, all the stuff about how bad the Chiefs really are, right? I think people do that. I think they just start talking and don't even know what they're saying, and they just hopefully that they find something cohesive along the way, which hasn't really happened much in discussions about the Chiefs. But I just wanted to give a shout out to this quote, shout out to Michael, for I think describing this really well. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you for tuning in. It is good to be back here in January. There is a lot to still be decided. Hopefully we're going to have a good weekend of divisional round football, plus hopefully as well an entertaining national championship game. Because if memory serves, we haven't really had an entertaining national championship game in some time. And it's something that college football has not had. And I will say, I think the college football, just throwing in this here last minute, I think this 12-team playoff has been successful because you have 2 teams that would not have been in the playoffs if this were a 4-team format or the 2-team, the BCS format, right? So I think in that sense, you have to say it's a success. You've let the top 12 teams in. Obviously, they still have some work to do. They got to fix the automatic bye for conference champions. But 12 teams getting in is a win. And so hopefully you've got 2 teams that have seemed to be pretty clearly the hottest teams in football the last month or 2. And they're on a collision course and shaping up to be a good game. So hopefully we finally get a good national championship on Monday, get a good divisional round, and then set things up for our annual Arrowhead Invitational next week. So looking forward to it. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. So until then, as always, go Chiefs.